Well, this is just fantastic. Commander Thex'vil of the Galactic Survey Corps stared at the smoking remains of his exploration vessel, the Pride of Zentara, now resembling a very expensive piece of abstract art scattered across what could only be described as the most hostile rock in the known universe. The emergency beacon had been screaming for the past 6 rotations, and frankly, he was beginning to wonder if rescue was worth it. "Sir," wheezed Navigation Officer Krellvex through his damaged breathing apparatus, "the atmospheric readings are, well, they're insane." "Define insane, Krellvex. And please make it quick. I can feel my exoskeleton starting to corrode." 21% oxygen, sir." 21%? That's enough to spontaneously combust most known life forms. Plus there's nitrogen, water vapor, and… Krellvex paused, checking his scanner twice. "Carbon dioxide. It's like someone took every toxic gas in the periodic table and decided to throw a party." Thex'vil's mandibles clicked in what his species considered deep contemplation, but what most others interpreted as impending doom. Deathworld. That's what the Galactic Council called planets like this. Places where evolution had apparently gotten drunk, fallen down a flight of stairs, and decided that everything needed to be 20 times more deadly than reasonable. The gravity was crushing for a civilized species. The temperature fluctuated wildly. The atmosphere was corrosive. The water fell from the sky without warning. And according to their sensors, massive electrical discharges randomly struck the surface just for fun. "Sir." A communications specialist Vornthai chimed in, her voice box crackling through the universal translator, "I'm not detecting any signs of intelligent life. No energy signatures, no quantum resonance patterns, no crystallized thought matrices. This place is deader than last cycle's budget proposals." "Good," Thex'vil muttered, adjusting his environmental suit's filters for the 14th time. "At least we won't have to explain to some primitive species why we just turned their backyard into a crater. Standard protocol, everyone. We establish a perimeter, wait for rescue, and try not to dissolve in the meantime." That's when they heard it. Footsteps. Not the sophisticated anti-gravity gliding of advanced civilizations, but actual, honest-to-the-void footsteps. Heavy ones. Getting closer. Commander?" Krellvex's voice had gone up approximately 3 octaves. "Those life-form readings I said weren't there? They're definitely there now." 2 figures emerged from behind what appeared to be some sort of primitive vegetation barrier. Bipedal? No visible environmental protection. No breathing apparatus. No radiation shielding. Nothing. They were just walking around, on a death world, like it was some kind of pleasant afternoon stroll. "Hello there," called out the taller one, a male specimen with facial hair that seemed to serve no apparent survival function. "You folks look like you could use some help." The female next to him, sporting what appeared to be pigmented cranial filaments arranged in an aesthetically pleasing but functionally questionable manner, crossed her arms and surveyed the wreckage with the expression of someone who had seen this exact scenario play out before. "Let me guess," she said, her voice carrying the kind of dry amusement that made Thex'vil's exoskeleton itch. "Your super-advanced spaceship wasn't designed to handle a little turbulence in our atmosphere?" Thex'vil's translator was having difficulty processing the concept of sarcasm, but the tone was unmistakable. These creatures were mocking them, primitives, mocking the Galactic Survey Corps. "We are Commander Thex'vil and crew of the Zentaran Exploration Fleet," he announced with as much dignity as one could muster while standing next to a burning heap of what used to be cutting-edge technology. "We require immediate assistance and evacuation from this hostile environment." The male, who introduced himself as Marcus, exchanged a look with the female, Elena. It was the kind of look that suggested they were sharing a private joke at everyone else's expense. "Hostile environment?" Marcus repeated, glancing around at what Thex'vil could only assume was certain death incarnate. "It's 72 degrees and partly cloudy. Perfect weather for a barbecue." "Barbecue," Vornthai whispered in horror. "They consume fire?" Elena stepped forward and Thex'vil instinctively activated his defensive protocols. Any species that could survive on a Deathworld without proper equipment was clearly dangerous, possibly feral, definitely unpredictable. "You're all looking a little rough around the edges," she observed, and Thex'vil realized with growing alarm that she was right. Their environmental suits were indeed showing signs of wear after less than an hour on this nightmare planet. "When's the last time any of you had a proper wash?" "Wash?" Thex'vil repeated the foreign concept. "You know, soap and water? Basic hygiene? Or do your people just rely on those fancy suits to keep you clean?" Before anyone could respond, Marcus had produced what appeared to be a primitive cleaning implement and a container of liquid. "Here, try this. It's homemade soap. Elena's recipe. Works great, and it won't corrode your equipment like those chemical cleansers you're probably used to." The crew of the Pride of Zentara stared in collective bewilderment as these two Deathworld natives casually offered them cleaning supplies as if crashed alien vessels were a regular Tuesday occurrence. But Vex stammered, "How are you surviving without life support? Without environmental controls? Without proper atmospheric filtering?" Elena's grin widened, and Thex'vil had the distinct impression that he was about to learn something that would fundamentally challenge his understanding of the universe. "Life support?" she repeated, that same dry amusement coloring her voice. "Sweetie, this is life support. We call it planet Earth, and it's been keeping us alive for about 300,000 years now." As Marcus handed him a bar of soap that smelled suspiciously pleasant, Thex'vil began to suspect that his definition of primitive might need some serious revision. The first drops of water began falling from the sky approximately 30 minutes later, and Thex'vil watched in horror as his crew's equipment began malfunctioning faster than a budget meeting in the Galactic Senate. "Sir," Vex shrieked, frantically shaking his plasma rifle. "My weapon's completely dead. The targeting system is offline, the power core is fluctuating, and I think something's growing in the barrel." "Same here, Commander," Vornthai added, staring at her communications array with the expression of someone who had just watched their life savings evaporate. "Everything's shorting out. How is this possible?" "These are military-grade, quantum-stabilized devices." Elena, who had been watching this technological meltdown with the kind of casual interest usually reserved for mildly entertaining street performers, pulled out a rectangular device from her pocket. She tapped it a few times, and suddenly music began playing. Crystal clear, perfect audio quality. She said, holding the device up as the water continued falling on it. "Funny how waterproofing works when you actually design for it." That's impossible," Thex'vil stammered, pointing at Elena's device with a trembling appendage. "Water destroys electronics. It's a fundamental law of physics." "Is it, though?" Marcus chimed in, producing his own similar device. He proceeded to deliberately hold it under the stream of water falling from the sky, then showed them the screen, which was still functioning perfectly. "Because I'm pretty sure we figured out how to make waterproof phones about, 20 years ago?" "Phones?" Vornthai repeated, as if the word itself might contain hidden meaning. "Communication devices," Elena explained patiently, as if addressing particularly slow children. "You know, for talking to people, taking pictures, accessing the sum total of human knowledge, the usual stuff." Thex'vil's world was beginning to tilt on its axis, and not just because of the gravity. "But your technology levels your development indicators according to our scans. You barely have spaceflight capability." "Oh, we have spaceflight," Marcus said with a grin that suggested Thex'vil was missing something important. "We just don't go around crashing into every planet we visit." It was at this point that Vex began making an alarming gurgling sound. His breathing apparatus was fogging up, his skin had taken on an unhealthy purple hue, and he appeared to be developing what could only be described as severe digestive distress. "Sir," he wheezed, "I think I'm dying." "Same here," Vornthai gasped, clutching her abdomen. "Everything hurts, and I can't stop, oh no." Elena and Marcus exchanged another one of those looks, and suddenly Elena was moving with the kind of purposeful efficiency that suggested she had dealt with this exact problem before. "Bacterial infection," she diagnosed, pulling out what appeared to be a primitive medical kit. Your immune systems aren't adapted to Earth microorganisms. Probably picked up something from your crash site. Bacterial infection? Thex'vil repeated in horror. But we have quantum-enhanced immune boosters, molecular-level pathogen barriers. How is this possible? Because Elena said, producing a small bottle of pills, you built your defenses for the threats you know about. Earth bacteria don't read your manual. She handed the pills to Vex. Take 2 of these with water. You'll feel better in a few hours. Wrong. What is it? Thex'vil demanded, his paranoia hitting maximum levels. Some kind of primitive poison? Alien mind control substance? Penicillin, Marcus answered cheerfully. We make it from bread mold. Bread mold? Vorn stared at the pills as if they might explode. You're giving us fungus? Yup, Elena confirmed. Same stuff that's been saving lives for about 80 years now. But hey, if you'd rather trust your quantum-enhanced immune boosters that are currently letting you die from a minor infection, be my guest. Vex, apparently deciding that potential poison was better than certain death, took the pills. Within minutes, his color began returning to normal. That's incredible, he whispered. How did you develop such advanced medical technology? Advanced? Elena snorted. Honey, this is basic first aid. We teach this stuff to children. It was at this moment that a new human appeared, apparently having heard the commotion. He was larger than Marcus and Elena, with arms that suggested he engaged in regular physical labor, and he was carrying what appeared to be primitive metal tools. Hey there, he called out, introducing himself as Jake. Heard you folks were having some equipment trouble. Thex'vil gestured helplessly at their pile of malfunctioning technology. Our quantum-forged alloy tools are failing. The molecular bonds are destabilizing in your atmosphere. Jake examined one of the alien implements, turning it over in his hands with the careful attention of someone who understood materials science. Pretty fancy. But look here, he pointed to several stress fractures that were beginning to appear in the alien metal. Your alloy's too rigid. No flexibility. It can't adapt to temperature changes or humidity fluctuations. He pulled out what appeared to be a simple steel hammer, the kind of tool that Thex'vil's species had abandoned millennia ago in favor of more sophisticated implements. Jake proceeded to demonstrate its effectiveness by fixing their damaged landing gear strut with a few well-placed strikes. But that's impossible. Vex protested, now feeling well enough to be indignant. Steel is primitive. Quantum-forged alloys are molecularly perfect. Molecularly perfect for what? Jake asked, continuing his repairs. Laboratory conditions? Because out here in the real world, sometimes you need something that can bend without breaking, rust without crumbling, and get the job done without a user manual. Elena, who had been watching this exchange with barely concealed amusement, finally spoke up. Let me get this straight. You people conquered the galaxy, right? Built an interstellar civilization? Mastered faster-than-light travel? Yes, Thex'vil replied, though his confidence was beginning to waver. And in all that time, in all that conquering and civilizing, nobody ever thought to make their weapons waterproof? The silence that followed was deafening. Or develop basic antibiotics? Or figure out that sometimes the simple solution is the best solution? More silence. Elena shook her head, her expression shifting from amusement to something approaching pity. You know what your problem is? You got so busy making things complicated that you forgot how to make them work. As Jake handed Thex'vil a perfectly repaired piece of equipment fixed with nothing but primitive steel tools and practical knowledge, the commander of the Galactic Survey Corps began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, his species had been going about this whole advanced civilization thing completely wrong. That's when Elena's pocket started ringing. Not beeping, not chiming, not producing the sophisticated harmonic frequencies that proper communication devices were supposed to emit. It was actually ringing, like some sort of ancient acoustic alert system. Hold on, she said, pulling out her rectangular device again. I need to take this. Thex'vil watched in fascination as she tapped the screen and began speaking to what appeared to be thin air. "Hey, Sarah. Yeah, we've got visitors. The spaceship kind? No, not the good kind. The kind that crash-landed because they can't handle a little rain." "Excuse me," Thex'vil interrupted, his scientific curiosity overriding his wounded pride. "But what is the operational range of that communication device?" "This?" Elena held up her phone. "Oh, pretty much anywhere on the planet. Sometimes beyond, if the satellite coverage is good." Vornthai, who had spent her entire career working with the most advanced communication systems in the known galaxy, made a sound like a deflating balloon. "Anywhere on the planet? But that's our most sophisticated quantum entanglement communicators can barely manage continent to continent without relay stations." "And you need how many relay stations for galactic communication?" Marcus asked with innocent curiosity. "Approximately 47,000, Vex answered automatically, then paused as the implications hit him. "Wait, how many relay stations do you use?" Elena finished her conversation and looked at him with that same patient expression she might use with a particularly slow child. "For planetary communication. 0. We bounced our signals off some metal balls we threw into orbit about 60 years ago." "Metal balls," Thex'vil repeated faintly. "Satellites," Marcus clarified. "Simple, effective, and they don't need constant maintenance by a crew of quantum engineers." "But Vornthai protested weakly, quantum entanglement is the most sophisticated form of faster-than-light communication possible." "Is it, though?" Elena asked, and that question was starting to haunt Thex'vil's dreams. "Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like a really complicated way to accomplish something we figured out with much simpler technology." Jake, who had been quietly observing this exchange while continuing to repair alien equipment with his primitive tools, looked up with a thoughtful expression. "You know what? If you really want to see something impressive, Marcus should show you the underground facility." "Underground facility?" Thex'vil's antennae perked up. Perhaps these humans had some sort of primitive bunker system where they hid from their planet's deadly environment. "Sure," Marcus said with a casual shrug. "It's not far. You guys want to see how we actually live?" The journey to this underground facility took approximately 20 minutes, during which Thex'vil's crew continued to marvel at how the humans navigated their Deathworld without any visible protective equipment. They walked through areas that should have been toxic swamps, across terrain that should have been impassable, and past weather phenomena that should have been lethal. "Here we are," Marcus announced, stopping next to what appeared to be a small hill covered in vegetation. "I don't see anything," Vex said, scanning the area with his instruments. "That's the point," Elena replied, pressing her hand against what looked like a tree trunk. Suddenly, a section of the hillside slid away, revealing an entrance that seemed to extend deep underground. What they found inside defied every assumption Thex'vil had made about human civilization. The underground complex was vast, spanning what appeared to be several kilometers in every direction. But it wasn't the size that left the alien crew speechless, it was the technology. Clean, efficient, and seamlessly integrated with the natural environment above. "Welcome to New Geneva," Marcus said, gesturing to a sprawling underground city that hummed with quiet efficiency. Population about 50,000, established 15 years ago when we decided that living on the surface was getting a bit crowded. The lighting system alone was more sophisticated than anything on Thex'vil's ship. It automatically adjusted to mimic natural sunlight patterns, provided full-spectrum illumination that promoted health and well-being, and apparently ran on power generated by the movement of underground water. "This is impossible," Vornthai whispered, staring at displays that showed real-time monitoring of everything from air quality to seismic activity to the health status of individual citizens. The computing power required for this level of environmental control would require a ship-sized quantum processor. "Actually," said a new voice, and they turned to see a woman approaching wearing what appeared to be work clothes. "It runs on a distributed network of about 10,000 individual processing units, each about the size of your thumb." Elena made introductions. "Everyone meet Dr. Lisa Chen, our Chief Systems Engineer." Lisa, meet the folks who think quantum entanglement is the pinnacle of communication technology. Dr. Chen's eyes lit up with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for particularly interesting scientific puzzles. Oh, you're using quantum entanglement for communication? How do you handle the decoherence problems in high-interference environments? Decoherence problems, Thex'vil repeated. You know, when your quantum states collapse due to environmental interference? Cosmic radiation, gravitational fluctuations, electromagnetic storms? Surely you've developed some kind of error correction protocols. The silence that followed was answer enough. You haven't, have you? Dr. Chen continued, her expression shifting from curiosity to concern. But that means your communications must be incredibly unreliable in any kind of hostile environment. How do you maintain contact during combat situations, or near stellar phenomena, or really anywhere that isn't perfectly controlled laboratory conditions? Thex'vil was beginning to understand why his species had such a poor track record with exploration missions. But how is this possible? He asked, gesturing to the incredible complexity of the underground city. Your species barely has interplanetary travel. According to our surveys, you're still using chemical rockets. Oh, we have better than chemical rockets, Marcus said with that same casual tone he used for everything that challenged the aliens' worldview. We just don't need to use them for every little thing. Chemical rockets work fine for getting off planet. Why overcomplicate it? Elena led them to an observation deck that looked out over the underground city's central plaza, where thousands of humans were going about their daily lives in what could only be described as a perfectly balanced ecosystem. See, here's the thing you don't understand, she said, leaning against the railing with the relaxed confidence of someone who had built paradise and made it look easy. You keep talking about how advanced your technology is, but what you've really done is build incredibly complicated solutions to problems that don't actually exist. She gestured to the city below them. We took a Deathworld, a planet that kills everything that isn't specifically designed to live here, and we turned it into home. Not by fighting the environment, not by building bigger and better life support systems, but by working with what we had and making it better. You want to know the difference between your species and ours? Dr. Chen added, pulling out a device that looked suspiciously like a more advanced version of Elena's phone. You build technology to impress people. We build technology to solve problems. As Thex'vil watched humans casually using devices that outperformed his ship's main computer while living in a self-sustaining underground paradise that made the galaxy's most advanced space stations look like crude shelters, he realized something that would haunt him for the rest of his career. His species hadn't conquered the galaxy. They had just been playing with expensive toys while the real civilization builders were too busy actually building civilization to bother conquering anything. Dr. Chen was apparently not finished dismantling Thex'vil's understanding of the universe. She pulled up a holographic display that made his ship's projection systems look like shadow puppets on a cave wall. So here's what I'm thinking, she said, manipulating three-dimensional models with casual gestures. Instead of letting you folks limp back to whatever passes for civilization in your neck of the galaxy, why don't we teach you how to actually build technology that works? Teach us? Krell-Vex sputtered, his pride making one last desperate stand. We are members of the Galactic Survey Corps. We have advanced degrees in quantum mechanics, stellar engineering, and xenobiology. And yet, Elena observed with that devastating dry wit, you crashed on the first planet with weather. Marcus stepped forward with the kind of patient enthusiasm usually reserved for beloved but slightly dim relatives. Look, we're not trying to insult you. It's just that you've obviously been approaching technology development from the wrong angle. You're building things to be impressive instead of building things to work. But our technology is impressive. Vorn Thai protested. We have quantum processors, molecular assemblers, faster-than-light drives. Do you, though? Dr. Chen asked, and Thex'vil was beginning to hate that question. Because from what I've seen, you have quantum processors that can't handle environmental interference, molecular assemblers that apparently can't make waterproof electronics, in faster-than-light drives that bring you to planets you can't survive on. She gestured to her holographic display, which now showed a comparison between human and alien technological approaches. See, you've been focusing on making things more complex, more exotic, more theoretically advanced. But complexity isn't the same as effectiveness. We could start with basic materials science, Jake offered helpfully. Show you how to make alloys that can actually handle real-world conditions instead of just laboratory environments. Or communication systems that work reliably instead of just impressively, Elena added. Or medical technology that prevents problems instead of just looking sophisticated, Marcus chimed in. Thex'vil found himself in the deeply uncomfortable position of realizing that these humans were offering him exactly what his species needed most, and they were doing it with the kind of casual generosity that suggested they helped stranded aliens on a regular basis. You would share your technology with us? He asked carefully. Of course, Dr. Chen replied as if the question itself was puzzling. Why wouldn't we? The universe is a big place. Everybody benefits when more people know how to build things that actually work. But don't you want something in return? Territory? Resources? Strategic advantage? Elena exchanged that look with Marcus again, and Thex'vil realized he was about to learn something else that would fundamentally alter his worldview. Thex'vil, she said gently, we've been watching your people stumble around the galaxy for about 30 years now. Watching us? Well, not watching specifically, Marcus clarified. More like occasionally noticing when you do something particularly spectacular. Like that time the Zentaran fleet got lost for 6 months because your navigation computers couldn't handle a solar flare. Or when the Galactic Council spent 2 years trying to figure out why their quantum communicators kept failing during important meetings, Dr. Chen added. Turns out you can't run quantum entanglement networks through active wormhole generators. Basic interference principles. Thex'vil's world was tilting again. You knew about our technical difficulties? Honey, Elena said with what might have been sympathy, half the galaxy knows about your technical difficulties. The other half is too polite to mention them. But we've successfully established colonies on 47 worlds. Have you? Dr. Chen asked, manipulating her display to show what appeared to be a galactic map. Because I'm showing 17 successful long-term colonies, 23 that failed within the first decade, and 7 that are currently on emergency life support. The silence that followed was the sound of Thex'vil's ego undergoing complete structural collapse. The thing is, Marcus continued with gentle patience, building a galactic civilization isn't about having the most advanced technology. It's about having technology that works reliably in the real world, under real conditions for real people. Speaking of which, Elena said, pulling out her communication device again, I should probably check in with the other colonies. Other colonies? Vornthai asked weakly. Oh yeah, we've got settlements on about what, 200 worlds now? Something like that. Hard to keep exact count. Elena began scrolling through what appeared to be a contact list. Let's see New Tokyo on Kepler 442 billion, New Sydney on Wolf 1061c, New Lagos on Proxima Centauri b. You have colonies on 200 worlds? Thex'vil's voice had gone up several octaves. Give or take. We don't really keep formal records. People just go where they want and build what they need. She tapped her device and suddenly they could hear voices from across the galaxy, humans casually discussing their daily lives on worlds that the Galactic Council considered uninhabitable. Hey, Elena, came a cheerful voice from the device. How's Earth? We just got done terraforming the northern continent here on Kepler 442 billion. Turns out the local flora responds really well to Earth bacteria. Who knew? That's great, Tommy. Listen, we've got some Zentaran Survey Corp folks here who are having some technology issues. Think you could share those atmospheric processor designs we developed last year? Sure thing. Sending them over now. Oh, and tell them that quantum-stabilized atmospheric scrubbers don't work in high-radiation environments. We learned that the hard way. As Elena casually coordinated technology sharing across hundreds of light years using a device she kept in her pocket, Thex'vil began to understand the true scope of human civilization. They hadn't conquered the galaxy. They had quietly, efficiently, and without fanfare built something far more impressive, a civilization that actually worked. Later that evening, as Thex'vil sat in the comfort of the underground city, updating his official log, he found himself writing words he never thought he would write. Personal log, Commander Thex'vil, Galactic Survey Corps. It is my recommendation that the Galactic Council immediately initiate formal diplomatic contact with the human species of Earth and its associated colonies. Furthermore, I recommend that we formally request technological and educational assistance from human engineers and scientists. It appears that in our pursuit of advanced and impressive technology, we may have overlooked the fundamental principle that the best technology is the technology that works. The humans have mastered this principle to a degree that makes our own achievements look like the fumbling attempts of children playing with toys they don't understand. Perhaps it's time we learned from the species that turned Deathworlds into paradise instead of trying to impress them with our failures. He paused, staring at the words on his screen, then added one final line. Note to self, ask Elena how they made soap that doesn't dissolve in acid rain. Our people need to know.